This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Show here on WCOW. Tonight, during this recorded interview, being broadcast live at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and wherever else in the world. And if you're missing the recording being broadcast, you can check it out on WCW.org archive or the Radio Horror YouTube channel and the slideshow of everything the author's worked on and who she is. We have Faith Marlow on the show with us, a USA best-selling author who has worked on a series of dark fantasy, paranormal, and horror books, including her own version of Dracula. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Faith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're, so USA Today's best-selling list is different than, like, the New York Times best-selling list?
They are, yeah. With that, you have to reach a certain rank on, I think it's 4, Amazon, Nook, Apple, and Kobo, I think. So 4 that you have to reach a certain rank on before you can be listed on the USA Today list.
Oh, gotcha. So
yeah.
Your series of novels is about, your primary series of novels that are probably your most well-known writing is the Dracula Bride series about the 3 different wives of Dracula?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We just actually did a short story written by a author who writes horror and vampire fiction. He used to work for the CIA. About the 3 grooms of Dracula, my version of Dracula, where we have gender swapped the entire cast.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so that is a short story within a larger book collection, but not 3 or 4 different novels. We also decided to make our grooms very not so white. One is white, black, and then Asian as well.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and the fact that Dracula, the story is 125 years old this year, and it's still being reinvented, and it's still being re-envisioned and like you said, to completely gender swap a cast like that. And I love it. And it just shows the flexibility of vampires in general, that they just kind of mirror us. And
we did one particular thing that someone's like, this character is not in Dracula at all. And I'm like, actually, this character is kind of in Dracula, but not the way you think. And we took there's a character in Dracula that's so offhandedly remarked as a victim to our main story. We turned it into a primary character into a spin-off story. So like in Dracula, Dracula gives the brides a baby to feed on, right?
Yes.
Well, we decided it would be creepy if Dracula had a young teenage girl to feed to her husbands.
Oh,
and she now is turned into a vampire and becomes like Dracula's apprentice. And she will get her own spin-off book in 2023.
Very cool. See, I love that. I love that. And you can
So someone said that, oh, so was the baby girl a boy? I'm like, honestly, I don't we can't swear. Know, and I don't care. The point is, a bunch of women chewing down on a baby is very just horrific. So like 3 grown men chewing down on a teenage girl is taboo, disgusting, and horrific. And that's what I wanted. So
exactly. Yeah, and like in my story,
and she's fine because she turns into a vampire, so whatever.
Right. I'm sure there's some comeuppance for that, once she does get turned. But
you had to name the brides of Dracula, right? Because I went to Dr. Stoker, and he said that his uncle never. Descartes Stoker, the great-grandnephew that's continuing the official Stoker continuation of Dracula, he said the brides were never named.
Correct. And, which I was stunned to find out because, I mean, my first memory of Dracula was from Scooby-Doo. So, I mean, I've grown up with, like, Dracula being in the peripheral and just, like, all the, like, monster movies and things, horror movies and things like that. But, I kept watching these movies and they're always there, these, sometimes scantily clad or always very,
They're always scantily clad. Let's just point that out there. They're not exactly, the conservative, women of Dracula, with the exception of Bela Lugosi's movie. I think the only one that actually has them in a
like almost like gowns, like
yes, but
yeah,
everything that has come out afterwards, like Monster Squad, for example,
yes,
or the Hammer horror movies with the one that appeared. Yeah, there was like one. There with the plunging neckline, cleavage, breasts,
right.
which is funny. We mentioned the Monster Squad. Can you answer the question? What happened to the third of the three brides? Because only two.
Oh my god, I don't remember. I'm
They
gonna have to watch Monster Squad again.
They point out in the commentary, there's one, there's two, what happened to the third one? And the cast who's doing the commentary is like, where did she go? We don't remember. Yeah. They honestly, they cannot remember what happened to the actress.
See, and I love that though, because, you know, like, wait. And that's kind of like with my story. It's like, everybody's like, hey, Dracula's awesome. Here's this foreboding character. Here's this terrible, you know, warlord that he may or may not have been based on in real life. And they're like, oh yeah, what was her name? You know, just married to one of the most infamous men in history. Oh, who? Oh yeah, no, it doesn't matter. You know, and that's like the vibe that I got. And I was sure, like when I watched the movie Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman and the three like amazing brides that was in that story, I'm like, okay, there has to be more.
Yeah, those are okay, but God, those are such a CGI mess. I really hate it now. Oh,
you can't go back and watch it now.
It's such a CGI mess. It's such a nasty mess.
I loved it when it came out.
I do love Marina Baccarin. Is that the name of the actress who played the lead wife in the Bram Stoker's Dracula? The one that bites what's his name in the penis?
Oh, that's Inara from Firefly, isn't
that? No, okay, different actress. She was in Spectre, James Bond Spectre. What is the name of that actress? She's like
goodness.
Monica Bellucci.
Yes. I knew her face in my mind.
Yeah, Michaela Baruca and Florina Kendrick played the three brides.
Yes.
And they were
amazing.
Naked and hot and just awesome.
And exactly what they needed to be. And amazing. And I loved them. Like, okay, now what's their names? And like, I didn't catch them. And like, okay, but at least they have names in Van Helsing. This is awesome. So I want to know who they really were. And so I started watching them. I watched the Bela Lugosi movie, and they didn't have names.
And they also, two of the actresses, the two that are not Monica, they have no careers. They have no career on IMDb.
Really?
They are just in that, and that's it. One is in something else that I don't care about, with Criminal Intent. Yeah. That's it. But this is it for them. This is their one screen credit on IMDb. My only question is, are they like stage actresses? Are they married to very rich husbands? They're European. They're European. Monica has tons of stuff on her IMDb. A lot of it is very foreign, which I will probably never watch. Italian. You know, she's in the Matrix Revolution. And she's in Spectre.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's in Spectre, which is a James Bond movie. She was the oldest female, by the way, to be in a James Bond movie as a Bond girl. Wow. Yeah, she's in her, what is she, 50, 60?
Yeah.
1964. 1964.
I mean,
So that's, Brotherhood of the Wolf. Did see her in that.
Yes.
But it's funny that they have like no IMDb whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's just like, again, this mysterious presence that just kind of comes in and out of these stories. And I was just stunned when I, like, okay, I'm going to read the book. I'm going to read the book very carefully. And I'm going to see, they have to have a story. They have to have a name or something. And it wasn't there. And I was just floored. And I'm like, okay. All right, cool. So I'm going to keep looking because there must be another book or something, and I couldn't find anything.
Oh, by the way, Michaela Burku, who's one of the brides, she's actually a model. She has a pretty prominent modeling career.
Oh, there you go. Well, that makes sense. I mean, because, again, they're kind of seen and not heard. They're just eye candy.
Right.
That's just kind of they're, cross between, like, eye candy, distraction, and cheerleader. And it's just like, whatever Dracula needs, wants, they're just there to pitch in and, and it just, I don't know. It seems shallow to me. And I was like, there has to be more somewhere. And I just couldn't find it. And I'm like, oh, well, somebody must have wrote a book. And I couldn't find that either. And I'm like, okay, well, this is an avenue. And so I needed something that felt, tangible, felt real. So, because to me, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, to me that it reads almost like a true crime novel. And the fact that, you have witness accounts and like legal documents and journals and ship manifests and like all these, like things that are pulling you into this like pseudo reality that he's constructed where these characters live. And I'm like, well, my characters need to live within that universe and abide by the same rules and that, vampire rules, about the daylight and the crosses and that sort of thing. And so I went back to give it some sort of truthfulness in quotes, and based my characters on the real life, at least in part, brides of, Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. And one of his brides, they didn't know her name either. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And she becomes the woman who inspired that inspired the main character, Valeria, in my stories.
You also seem to go on a trend of these unknown female characters in fiction, because you're also done Medusa as her own story, and and she's part of this Scorned Woman series of books. Not to play devil's advocate here, but no, I'm not. What are you? Did this come from that thing that happened in 2020? Was it the statue of Medusa holding up the head of Perseus?
I think we were kind of in the same. It was all going on at the same time. Actually, the inspiration for this story came from a meme. I'm like, not complicated, but it came from a meme, and it said, what if Medusa fell in love with a blind woman? I'm like, oh, what if she did? And so,
damn it, that was my idea for a comic book.
But yeah, I saw the meme for that. And I'm like, that's intriguing. And
because it'd be the only person she could be able to date.
Exactly. Is someone that would be blind. And so, yeah, and I just kind of sprang off from that. And of course, that all came up with the statue and stuff. That was all kind of swirling at the same time, And I don't know if I saw the statue first. I think I had started writing on the story first. And then the statue, I think I saw the statue after I was finished with it, because I was just amazed when I saw that. And the head of Perseus that she's holding in that sculpture is actually the artist. He carved a self-likeness of himself, and that's the artist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that made it even more interesting. But, and so, and again, with Dracula, I did, naturally I departed from Dracula a little bit because, my series keeps going. So, Valeria obviously doesn't die at the end of being Miss Dracula, but, with Medusa, I kind of took the same approach, and it's like, I want to write within the confines of what we know about this individual. And and for me, the only things that I really knew about Medusa was the fact that, she was a victim of an assault, and she was cursed, and she was murdered.
Who was the assaulter? Perseus, or something prior to her getting her head chopped off?
Poseidon.
But what did Poseidon do to... my Greek mythology is rough sometimes. I always need to reference a book and grab a copy and go, oh, that's right. Okay, I got my I got it. I'm back in the game.
Yeah. It's... and there's a few different... But the most common...
I would love to see Medusa show up in the MCU, because now they've introduced the Greek gods recently in the newest Thor movie, and they are definitely seem to be setting up, and I don't want to spoilers for anybody, but they are definitely seem to be setting up possibly the next Thor movie being like a War of the Gods.
Yeah.
Which would be epic, and I would love to see Medusa show up, because she's part of Greek mythology, and Zeus is now here, played by Russell Crowe.
Yes. We watched that Friday night.
Did you ever watch Justice League, just before we get back to what you were saying, did you ever watch Justice League Unlimited?
Yeah, I think so.
That was part of the DC animated universe that like Batman came from. Batman, the Superman animated series, Harley Quinn, the 90s cartoons. There is an episode where Cersei turns Wonder Woman into a pig because she's pissed off at Hippolyta, and since she can't get to Paradise Island, she'll I'll just take it out on her daughter, the Justice Leaguer. So she turns her into a pig. And Batman and Zatanna have to go to Tartarus to get information from Medusa because she's like, I was Cersei's cellmate for 1,000 years. Woman won't shut up in her sleep.
Wow. I'm going to have to go find that because no, I haven't seen that. I did watch,
Batman, and by the way, Batman and Zatanna, when they meet with Medusa, are wearing blindfolds.
Well, yeah, Batman's resourceful. He was prepared for this.
Well, it was Z's idea. It was Z's idea.
Yeah,
because she's tapped into the supernatural stuff a lot more than Batman is. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did watch Bloodlines, and Medusa shows up in that as well.
Oh, right. But go back to what you were saying about Medusa and Poseidon.
Yeah, she, there's a couple different ones, and the one that, versions of the story, but the one that I went off from was the fact that Medusa was a priestess in Athena's temple, and, as when she was human, and she was, desired by Poseidon, and she, in the story, she is assaulted by Poseidon, and of course to be of service in the temple she had to be a virgin, and so she was deflowered basically and in the temple, and out of revenge Athena cursed her to where no man would ever want to look at her again, and made her Medusa with the snakes and the laser eyes, stone eyes and that sort of thing, and so that was her, and instead of, I guess instead of taking it out on Poseidon, a fellow god, she punished the victim. And that just set really sour with me. I'm like, you know what? Athena's going to be a bad guy here because, we aren't fooling around with that. And so I wanted there to be more to her than her assault and her death. And that's something nobody ever sees, like the recent Clash of the Titans movie that came out a few years back.
Yeah, the one with the guy from Avatar.
Yes.
I like both. Honestly, I kind of like both those movies. They're stupid, but I do like them. They're stupid as hell, but they're fun.
Right? Everything doesn't have to win an Oscar. Did you have fun watching it? Yes. That's all. It's all that matters.
No, but here's my attitude about films: is that if you are so blinded by your fandom of how terrible a movie is, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
The new, for instance, this is the 15th anniversary of Transformers, the first of the Michael Bay disaster films.
Oh, geez.
And yes, they made billions of dollars, and I do have some things about them I like. But I can admit there is a Optimus Prime truckloads of things wrong with those movies. And it wasn't until they got to Bumblebee you were like, that was really good. That had a lot of heart and shockingly was well put together.
I watched the first one. I love the first one.
Right.
And I don't know how much further than that I.
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. The first one's back in theaters coming up soon, so if you really love it, you can go back in theaters to see it. But back to Medusa, you talked about this off the air, that you stay away from reading other people's fiction about Dracula. Does that the same thing about Greek mythology, other than the original stories that were written is the only thing you'll read because you need something to base your stories on? But do you avoid? Right. But you said you watched the Clash of the Titans film, so.
Yes. If I'm writing it, if I'm actively writing the story at the time, I will definitely steer clear of anything that's themed from any, it's got similar themes to it, like stories about Medusa, because there's a handful out there now. I definitely steer clear of it while I'm working. And the Miss Dracula series has been with me for, I think, 13 years now, from conception and to now, And so I'll watch movies concerning Dracula, but I don't read the books because for whatever reason, it seems like watching them, you can separate them in your mind better than reading them. Because for me anyway, like I can watch a movie and like, oh, okay, that went with that. But if I read it, that's where I get worried that I might inadvertently merge something from something else. Like I try to keep, at least when I'm reading and when I'm writing the Dracula, Miss Dracula series, I'm working on either what I've done or my notes or straight from the Stoker novel, and try to steer clear of books themed after Dracula. But like the Castlevania series on Netflix, or, you know, pretty much any movie. Dracula Untold, it came out a while back with Luke Evans. I watched that, and of course it talked about the Brides of Dracula too, and so that I watched it, and I was able to like, oh, okay, cool. She's in, you know, there's a bride in this one, and it's kind of got a little bit of heart to it, but that, you know, I was able to keep it all separated. But I guess I'm a little more leery when it comes to reading.
Did you ever meet or hear an interview by Marv Wolfman? Do you know who that is?
By who? I'm sorry?
Marv Wolfman.
No.
Prolific comic book writer responsible for the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Teen Titans, and all the characters that you're mostly aware of.
Okay.
Superman, Amazing Spider-Man writer, created like Black Cat. Again, Crisis on Infinite Earths is probably his biggest claim to fame in terms of like pop culture zeitgeist of career-changing books. But he was also the writer on Tomb of Dracula for Marvel Comics for 70 issues.
Oh, okay.
He created Blade the Vampire Hunter. And when he came on my show, he said to me that I have, other than the original Dracula movie starring Bela Lugosi and like and then the Jack Palance film, I have never seen or read any other Dracula adaptation or read any story of Dracula, and I don't ever plan to, because it would have influenced how I wrote Tomb of Dracula, and I didn't want that to happen, and to this very day I still won't.
Wow. Yeah, I have so much to catch up on, like, if and when the series ever completes. I guess eventually it'll end, you know, I know that, but, you know, when it does, I'll have a lot to catch up on. Specifically, Darker Stoker, I'm sure I butchered his name and I didn't mean to, but definitely want to get his. And there was another, The Historian, I believe, is another one that I was referred to once that I would love to read, but I haven't even cracked it open, you know. And one thing I found too, Renfield turns up, I think, in some of the Dresden Files, and I was like, well, there's there's another character you have to kind of watch out, like how you approach him, because you don't want to do something that's already been done. So even though you do try to keep your train of thought on track, you do kind of have to search it out. It's like, oh, has somebody already done this? Because, you know, it's a century and a quarter of influence that this story has held on books, movies, comics, you know, even music. There's even, songs about Dracula. So, so anytime I get a new idea about something I want to do, I always Google it to see if somebody's already done it and how close mine would be. And in being Dracula's heir, I pull in a character from Bram Stoker's novel, and to the best of my knowledge, no one has approached it this way, and so I can't really say who it is without giving away like a big oopsie in the plot, but yeah, so definitely looking for those little quirks like that. But it's hard when you've got so much out there that's already been inspired by this story.
Yes, I understand. When they're you also have books that are not connected to the main to a series of novels, which we'll get into. But where did your paranormal, dark fantasy, horror writing kind of start? How did you get into all that?
I think it just started just like I grew up with it. Like, my mom was a horror movie buff. Some of my best memories of being a kid was sitting and watching, I think it was on USA. They would play the old 80s, like early 80s and like in the early 90s, later 80s slasher and horror movies. So, we watched Jason and all of them and the Blob and, just all those, and which led to the Universal monsters and watching Creature from the Black Lagoon and Wolfman and the Bela Lugosi's Dracula and all those. And so it just kind of snowballed, but I kept going back to vampires. As it probably from watching and reading Anne Rice a little too young, probably had a lot to do with it too. Because that, I can remember watching Interview with the Vampire in the theater when I was probably, I can't remember offhand when it came out, but, probably getting into that, like I said, a little bit younger than I should have. So, but yeah, it's just always been there with me. And to see them come back in, and like the early 2000s was like this amazing time for vampire fans with all the movies and things that was coming out at that time. So it just seems like we just keep meeting up. We just keep finding each other.
What was a author that was a big influence for you?
I guess the hokiness of it, everybody says Anne Rice, but of course, Anne Rice, I think to say she didn't, influence, wasn't a big influence would be, just a lie, but it seems like would be a common answer, but of course it would be a common answer, but, I definitely think that she influenced me because of the humanity that they have along with their, I guess, monstrosity, and you see vampires working through relationship issues even. So definitely her, just in the way she framed them, just the whole almost romantic feel that she gave them. That definitely, I think it just, with that and, of course the Bram Stoker, but, it all feeds each other into this like pop culture idea that we have of Dracula or even Lestat at this point.
When you're writing, how long does it take you to get a story done versus a novel? Do you have a method to make sure you are banging out pages every day, or is it every week? And your stuff is mostly published through publishers, right? Not self-published?
Mm-hmm. It's both. I've been a combination of the two. It's here in the near future. I'm probably going to be taking control of them all and self-publishing again, because I want to be in control of them as opposed to going through someone else. So, but as far as like a method for staying on track, unfortunately, I wish I did have something like that, and I wish I could create something like that. But I definitely have seasons of hot and cold when you're going and that's the only thing you can do, and you wake up and it's the first thing on your mind and it's the last thing on your mind before you go to bed, and then you may go a period of time to where there's not a creative thought that passes between your eyes, and so I definitely have that struggle.
Writer's block.
Yes. And like being Dracula's heir, being Miss Dracula, it flowed amazingly smooth. It just like it unfolded in front of me, and I just had to write it down, like a movie in my brain. I just had to write down what I saw and what I heard. Being Dracula's widow, pretty much followed along suit, a little more difficult. And being Dracula's heir, that one was my biggest challenge, because it actually took me from start to finish. It took me about 7 years to get that book the way I wanted it, and multiple rewrites, multiple just walking away, writing other books, other short stories in between, coming back to it, walking away. And finally, I ended up making a folder that was called, I actually, as hokey as it sounds, I named the folder Cut My Book into Pieces, because I was thinking of the Papa Roach song, My Last Resort, because I'm like, this is it. This has to work, because I am out of options for making this story flow the way I want it to. And I made a Word document for each scene, because it was like a puzzle. Like, I knew I had the pieces, but I couldn't see the image. And I just chopped it up and laid it out and re-scrambled it up, and like, okay, there it is. So, I mean, like, the pieces were there, but I just had them in the wrong order, and then I knew what to add. I had the beginning, and I knew where I wanted to be at the end, but the center, the conflict, I could not get ironed out, and I just cut it up and looked at it in pieces, and then was able to, like, reshape it into what it needed to be.
Do you yourself believe in the paranormal?
I do.
You do.
I
do a podcast called Supernatural Creatures and Lore, which talks about like the monsters and mythology, ghosts and goblins that Sam and Dean fought on Supernatural, the TV show. And in every episode, I always point out that I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in werewolves. I think people are like, I could turn into a werewolf. I'm like, show me. I will sit here and let you kill me, and I will let you devour me. But show me. I don't have to show you anything. Oh, okay. Big bravado all of a sudden. You can't turn into a werewolf for me.
Exactly.
Vampires are another thing. I am aware of what magazine that you were just recently interviewed in. I'm not going to get into the whole energy, blood-drinking vampires and real-life mythology right now. You go listen to my interview with Father Sabastian if you want to hear all that. But I have a certain open mind about certain things that I can see and understand and feel myself. But I have been to more than enough haunted places, and nothing happened.
Right.
And I'm like, because you're not spiritually open to it. I'm like, don't give me that.
Like, I have asked.
Yeah, don't give me, I'm not spiritually open to it. I'm like, dude, I slept over in some place that was supposedly haunted, and I was just like, wow, what are they showing us? The spirits are going to show up because I'm bored.
Like a 1408, where he keeps going around trying to find some place that's haunted, and and just, you know, and like in a search for some sort of meaning or some kind of proof of what's after. I don't, like I said, I'm a hopeful skeptic.
Gotcha.
I'm a hopeful skeptic. I believe in paranormal to the point that, because I have had situations, I have been in situations and things that's happened that I've heard or experienced that there's no reasonable explanation for it that I could ever find.
Gotcha.
And so I have to give some credit, because I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, I does every story that I hear sound, you know, legitimate? You know, absolutely not. But at the same time, I know what I've encountered. And so I have to at least say there's something that we maybe don't understand, and, you know, why does it interact, or why does it's one person and not another, or one place and not another, you know, who knows? But, and you know, and that just goes to the whole idea of it too, as well, just the even more unknown, because it wouldn't be so unknown if you could just like dial it up like you're calling someone on the phone, you know. But I was actually able to lend some of the experiences that I have had personally into Our Fearful Roots that I co-wrote with Carmilla Voyez. And so that was fun, because I got to put a little bit of my own experiences into that.
Fantastic.
Yes.
What have you ever worked on anything besides books, like any comics or screenplays that I might not be aware of?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever thought? Have you ever had or here's a better question: has anyone come to you to adapt, mainly, you know, Mrs. Dracula into anything so far?
They haven't. I haven't been approached by it, but when I have a few things I have to get cleared up, so I'm hoping by maybe the end of this year, beginning of next year, I'm going to start taking some courses in screenwriting, and because I think I would love I love that. Because that's combining two of my favorite things, with movies and books. So, and I would definitely love to do a screenplay of being Miss Dracula. And some of my short stories too, that I can I can literally see them in my brain that this would be a good movie or a good series or something like that. So, I would love to do something like that, or love to be approached to collaborate on something like that.
Or like turning Mrs. Dracula into a comic book.
Yes, that would be amazing. Because it's there. I mean, I think there's enough visual interest of the story that it could be, and in a serial form, because there's the three brides and they basically have their own stories, but they also have their own inner thoughts with the journals and things like that. So I think it could definitely be I think it could work for a graphic novel like that. I think that it would lend itself well.
Do you think you would have to do it yourself, or somebody would pick it up, or do you have enough of a following you think you could do it on like Kickstarter?
I don't know. Probably I would have to have help with it. For one, I'm not an artist in that regard.
But you would definitely, if you're not an artist, find somebody. But if the fan base is there enough for it, they'll support a Kickstarter to adapt it.
I don't know. I guess I'm kind of hesitant to do the Kickstarter thing. I had never even considered it, honestly. That
the first book, I think I've read the first book, so I know that I think that would definitely lend itself to, getting adapted in some way.
Yeah, I think it could, and I would love that. I mean, anything to just see it in another form. I mean, that's only good things, you know what I mean? I really do think the first one could. Well, and going forward, I think the other ones could too.
Where can people find you online?
I am pretty much everywhere. Of course, Amazon. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook group, which is I'm interactive in there all the time. It's Faith Sweetly Twisted Readers, because that's kind of the nickname I was given, as my stories were sweetly twisted. They're weird. They're a little twisted, but they got some heart. And but they find me there. I'm on Instagram, TikTok-ish. I struggle with TikTok, but I'm trying. And I'm going to work on Twitter too. So I'm there, but I've just started picking it back up, trying to be more active there.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Faith, for coming